finals beta playtest is in full swing, and if you're looking for some helpful tips and tricks to help you win matches, you're in the right place. The finals isn't quite like other multiplayer games and features some interesting twists on classic game modes that can make it a little bit harder to master. Combine that with some impressive level destruction capabilities and tactical nuance, and playing this game can take a bit of adjustment if you're used to Apex or Overwatch. So let's get you up and running and getting those wins as quickly as possible. Our first tip is simple: juggle the deposits. You should know by now that winning in the finals is all about collecting that cash. But when you pick up one of these cash-filled boxes, you leave yourself wide open to all-out assault. When transporting a deposit box, it's best practice to get used to juggling it while you're walking. If you continuously throw the deposit box in the direction that you're walking in, it reduces the amount of time it takes to bring up your weapon, which means you have a much higher chance of winning a gunfight with your gun already up and ready to fire. And don't worry too much if you accidentally throw a deposit box off the edge of the map. It can happen, especially on Soul. If the cash falls off the edge, it'll retrace its steps along the blue light trail, so you'll be able to pick it back up again with no fuss. It's also worth remembering that the deposit box can actually deal a small amount of damage to enemies if you throw it at them. Like an Argos catalogue to the face of your unsuspecting sibling, if you're caught out with no weapon raised, it might be worth throwing the deposit box into an enemy's face to buy you a bit of time. Next, and this may seem obvious in a shooter that actively encourages you to blow the ever-living hell out of the map the devs lovingly created, use your environment. Scattered across the maps, you will find several colour-coded canisters, and these can be picked up and thrown at either enemies or walls to achieve the desired effect. Red canisters invariably will explode shortly after impact or when you shoot them, and green canisters will emit a poisonous gas cloud that harms enemies. But don't just use these canisters on other players. Firing an explosive canister at a wall can open up a new path for you to get the jump on opponents. You gotta think creatively in the finals. It can be the difference between a win and a loss. There's also plenty of buttons and elevators that can be interacted with on the maps to raise or lower barriers, or even open certain doors that provide additional cover. You will eventually learn where these buttons are as you play more of the maps, but it's worth keeping an eye out for them just in case. So you've just been killed. Bad luck, but here's our next tip: spend respawn tokens wisely. There are actually a few tactics to think about when it comes to respawning in the finals. Don't, and I know it sounds silly, but work with me here, don't always look to respawn immediately. At the start of the match, you're rewarded 2 respawn tokens to use. In the event of your death, these can be used to respawn immediately to get back into the fight, but you don't have to spend a respawn token to get back into the action. Teammates can revive you from your dropped action figure, which will bring you back for free to the same location where you died. And you will all respawn at the same time and location as each other if you wait for a full team wipe. So when you're dead, put your feet up and take a moment to assess whether it's actually worth spending that token. If your team look like they're going to lose the team fight without you there to save them, everyone knows you carry this squad, don't spend a token. Instead, save them for the endgame fights where coming back to assist your teammates will mean the difference between a win or a loss. Now, remember those action figures we mentioned? Look out for those. You may have spotted a few tiny action figures of other players sitting on the floor while cutting about the maps in a hurry. These mark downed players and are what enemies can interact with to bring their teammates back into the fray. As such, if you spot one of these little action figures, it's worth sticking around for a short while to see if another player comes to revive them. If you manage to get the jump on them, you'll not only prevent a player from getting revived, but you might also put the rest of their team out of action as well. It's a classic rope-a-dope. In a game that's all about keeping the competition at bay, making sure your enemies have to fight their way back to deposit boxes and cash out stations is a pretty solid game plan. Which leads us to our final, maybe counterintuitive sounding tip: don't always go for the deposit boxes. Yes, I know, it can be incredibly enticing to go straight for a deposit box location, but this isn't the only viable plan of attack. Ultimately, all that matters in a match of the finals is that you cash out with the most amount of money at the end of a round. In theory, that means all you need to do is intercept a cash out station at the very end of a deposit to reap all of the rewards. While most teams will likely head straight to a deposit box to claim it as their own, there's nothing stopping you from camping out at a cash out station and lying in wait for an unsuspecting team to do the hard work for you. Just make sure you claim the cash out station for yourself when the enemy team doesn't have a chance to take it back, and you should be golden. Is it camping? Well, maybe. But I enjoy a good weekend in the Lake District, so don't judge. That's the game. There's no honour among thieves or campers. So there you go, 5 solid tips to get you winning in the finals. Let us know your tips down in the comments, and if you want to know more about this new free-to-play shooter on the block, check out this video here.